dark out, I sit in bed, I feel the sleep dog in my eyes. Still awake this late at night, a day done and nothing to write. Some say it's difficult to find, and the words they just stay inside. How about you start at the beginning? You woke up, go on, I'll listen. Is life like this? Pen to paper alone like this? Is this how they'll see me when I'm gone? Then should I dismiss my real thoughts to protect my kids? Or should I let them see my weaknesses? How will they remember me when I'm gone? Should I let them see my weaknesses? How will they remember me when So I record the same, the wild and mundane, 'cause I'm a whole person like Billy too. I'll tell the truth when I was wrong, and what I sacrificed to be strong. I'll write every day, I'm in the way, even make it a habit that I don't lose. 'Cause I look back to, with a warmer heart, at the younger girl I once was. My journal's like a link book to my brain, so reach out to it, cross the gate. 'Cause everything I am is safe here in my mind. Someone told me that I couldn't be myself. I would be me even more through my doubts. Get a grip on my soul as you read on. It's harder to love me now that you can arrange all my flaws. Category, time, date, and cause. Get about halfway and pause. It's not worth it, there are so many more. I've been greedy and selfish and borderline reckless. I mostly broke promises up with myself when I told myself till I could feel no more breath. I'd be better than this, I'd be better than this. Only managed to disappoint myself. No one knows, so they can't force me to look for help. It's a cycle I've repeated and know so well, but it's secret. Can you keep it? It's dark out, I sit in bed, I feel the sleep dog in my eyes. Still awake this late at night, a day done and nothing to write. Some say it's difficult to find, and the words they just stay inside. How about you start at the beginning? You woke up, go on, I'll listen.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining the first stream of Watch Me Code. My name is Sander Schutten, and I'm a software engineer at a company called InSpark in the Netherlands. And well, I've been doing software development for about 14 years now, 14, 15 years, all in the Microsoft ecosystem. And well, a couple of months ago, I thought, well, why not show off what I do during the day and give you a glimpse of what my day-to-day work looks like, so you can get an idea of what life is like for a software engineer, specifically one working in the Microsoft ecosystem. So expect a lot of Azure stuff. I'm doing a lot of Azure Logic Apps and Azure Functions most of the times, but today we're going to focus on one of the SharePoint Framework solutions that InSpark built. It's a web part for the company intranet. The solution that we have built is called Company Connec, which is basically a bunch of different apps to quick start for intranet. And today we're going to look at one of these web parts, because there is a feature request, and we're going to look into that today, see what we need to do about it, and well, let's see how far we can get during, well, an hour and a half today. Yeah, like I said, this is my first stream for Watch Me Code, and we'll have to see when I pick up the schedule. So I try to do this more often, maybe even every week. But yeah, let's see where it goes. If you have some feedback, leave it in the chat. And well, let's get to it. So first, let me show the web part. So switching over to my desktop over here. So here we are in code. I already opened the web part. It's called My Starting Point. And let me launch it first. And then we can take a glimpse at it. So who hasn't done SharePoint development before? I'm running gulp-serve with the flag no browser, so that it runs the server basically, but it does not launch a browser for me, so I can pick my own. And I'll switch over to this window. We already see it over here, but let me navigate to. I always try to tend to forget the benchmark or the workbench, but luckily I have copied right here. So SharePoint comes with a workbench where you can test out your web parts, which is actually quite nice. So if you have experience developing for SharePoint a few years ago, before the modern experience, it is quite a painful exercise, but today we have this modern experience and we use all kinds of modern tools. So let me find my starting point. There it is. So my starting point is basically a web part that gives you a brief overview of the tasks for today. Right now it's not configured yet, so we just see a welcome message. So let us configure it quickly. You can configure quite a lot of it, but what we are looking at today is this user data. So I can add several stuff to it. For example, the meetings today, or unread inbox emails, and I need to refresh it for it to become available. And here we are. So this is basically the generic setup for this web part, and it shows a couple of well, we call it user data, but this data is very limited, so I can pick a couple of things for Outlook, and I can pick a couple of things for Jammer. But that's basically it, and we see a lot of customer requests coming in where we want to integrate it with third-party systems, so financial systems, planning systems, etc. For example, to show if you need to submit your hours for the week. Currently, that's only possible by doing some custom code, but that means that we need to create an instance of this web part for each of our customers with specific code in it. Of course, that's not what we want to do. It's not really maintainable. So what we want to do is make it extensible in a flexible way. So that's what we are going to try to do today, or at least make a start. So what's the idea? And maybe it's easier if I sketch it really quick. So let me switch over to the whiteboard. So we have this web part on a SharePoint site. So this is our SharePoint Online site, and here we have the My Starting Point. I'll abbreviate it to MSP web part. And the web part currently is connected to the Microsoft Graph for fetching data like Outlook, mails, and calendar as well. It's also connected to Jammer. That's built in, but we have to build that in explicitly because that's what we tend to use at most of our customers. So what we want to do next is if you configure the My Starting Point web part, it will look up in some data storage. And we're probably going to do that through a function. We're not going to connect to it directly, so we have a function here. And it will get the user data options, or whatever we'll be using it, or renaming it, but for now let's call it the user data options. So we can extend the user data options over here in this this storage table as a small database, and that can feed that list that I showed you earlier. For the options that you can pick from when you configure the web part. But we want to make it really easy to add options to that list. So what we're planning to do, and we're going to try out today if that's even possible, what I want to have is a logic app. So when I want to add another user data option, I want to create a logic app with a trigger, and that trigger, that's a well, MSP trigger, something that we're gonna build. And basically what that does, it's a custom connector which registers a webhook through that function. So as soon as you save this logic app, or maybe even a flow, maybe we want to enable it through flow as well, that's always an option, it will register a webhook with that function, which is then stored in that database. So once you add another logic app with this trigger, it will automatically also add an option to that table, which is great. Next thing is when this web part is going to request the data in runtime. So we just talked about configuration time. So when it's going to request the data in runtime, it will call that webhook. Maybe directly, maybe through that function. Not sure yet, but eventually what it does is it calls that function or the webhook that triggers this logic app. That logic app then does some magic to calculate the final result, so that number that we want to display on the screen, and then it needs to return that number. Ideally, I would also like to create a custom action for that, but not sure if that's possible, but at least we have to do a response in a predetermined format so that that function can then return it to the web part. So that's in short the idea to do. So for now we're gonna leave the web part for as is. We're gonna hook that up later when we have it all set up. What we want to do now is build this function that enables us to register a webhook, and also that enables us to retrieve the options in the data storage. And we're going to set up that data storage. So we're probably going to look at using table storage for that in Azure. And for the, we're going to look at the custom connector next, once that function is doing some stuff so that we can hook it up. Right. So first off, we're going to create a new function and set it up in Azure so that we can run it. Switching back to desktop. All right. Yeah, I've tried building functions with code, but somehow I still prefer to use Visual Studio proper. It just does a little bit more stuff for me, so it's a bit easier for me to use this. We're going to create a new project, and I want to build an Azure function. See, we already have that repo set up. Just have my starting points. Yes. Well, this just contains all the web part stuff, so let's just make a new one for now. Let's call it company CZ extensions, company Connect extensions. If we don't like the name, we'll change it later. And here we'll create select this folder, and let's call it going to do here. First, let's create an empty solution. Gives me a little bit more control of the structure. Let's call the CC extensions. That should have created it. Not in the place I would prefer. So let's see. Let's close the solution. Let's just move it there. Now let's add a new project within this solution for the Azure functions, and let's call it functions for now. Let's keep it simple. So I'm using the C# version. We're going to create an HTTP trigger so that we can do a get and a post. And yeah, we used function access rights, which is fine for now. Okay, let's create the functions. So now we have this function, and well, first let's see if we can run this first. Let's see if that works. So it was a good one. It's taking its time. Close code for 1 second. Right, comes. Okay, one. Right, finally. So now we have this function over here. And if I paste it over here in the browser, then it will call my function. In this case, the default expects a parameter, so alright, function works, no surprise there. But of course we do not want function to do this, so let's change it because we want to, for example, get user data options. Okay, the get user data options is a get, so we can get rid of the post. And see, it does not need a parameter. It will just look up in the data storage what options we have available, and we'll return all of them. Let's get rid of this. And let's see. Okay, it's fine for now. But we want to have a table store so that we can test this out. Well, usually I have not used the memory data store before. Maybe we can try that out for today. So here we have the local storage account. And later tables. It's empty. Probably it's at set. My local settings change to do that one. Yeah, use development storage is true. Cool. Okay, so basically what I want to do is get access to the table, and we can do that in the function. So then we would have to set up a connection to the Azure table storage, or we can use a parameter binding in this function and bind it directly to a table. I like to do that, so let's set that up. But first I need to have some stuff, some NuGet package for table storage, and I'll always forget which ones I need. So again, let me open a previous solution of mine. So I can check that out. Pretty sure I used it in this solution. As of today, my machine is pretty slow. I think it has something to do with this little icon in the bottom right, because I see that I have some updates, and usually it means that I need to update in order for me to get back to work speed that I like. Yeah, this is the example. Right. So let's call it user data options. And right now we don't have the table available, and we want to have this one. Go. But we don't have the table attribute available as it appears. Therefore, we need to have a NuGet function or NuGet package. Let's see which one's installed. Any other solution that I have? It's a resource manager, web jobs extension storage. That's the one that I need. Copy this. Going back to the function, and we'll add that package over here as well. That should hopefully give us that table attributes. There it is. Already resolved it. So what this basically does is when this function is called, the Azure Functions runtime will see this as an parameter binding, and it will try to resolve that. And this particular parameter binding will set up a connection to a cloud table, so it will return that cloud table and feed it to us as a parameter. So we don't need to do that dance with Azure Storage with the keys and stuff. The keys we can configure in our configuration in our app settings. And what this basically does is, well, usually you would have here the table name in quotes, but we want to make that configurable. So what we do, if you use this name between the percentage signs, it will resolve this from the configuration. So we can go to the local settings and add this as a setting, and then we can specify a name. So for example, user data options, and let's format it. Right. So in runtime, this will get substituted by the user data options, and then the table will be resolved. It will be created if it does not exist, I think, and we will have a reference to this table, so now we can query that table. So we need to have some entity to query it for. Currently we don't have that, so let's create entity. I'd like to add it in a subfolder. So let's create a class, and let's call that class user data option. Public, and we need to extend it from entity object. What is it called? Data entity, table entity. I always tend to forget. Table entity. Table entity automatically gives us the partition key and row key for our entity, and those two properties are required for each of the entities that you store and retrieve from Azure Table Storage. Then we have those IDs, but we also want to have some kind of description. So if I move back to this web part over here, in this configuration we have a description, so title or whatever, and we need to be able to set that. So we'll create a property, type string, and let's call that type. Let's clean up the code, let's get rid of the unused usings. Okay, so now we have a simple entity, so good for now. Maybe we need to extend it, but for now this is fine. So basically we want to get all, so that's a pretty straightforward query, I would expect. In case of the multi-tenancy, so we're gonna roll this out at multiple clients. We expect for now to have each client have their own instance of this table storage and an instance of this function that we create, to keep it completely separated from each other. So we don't need to care about retrieving just certain user data options from this table. We can just retrieve all. Yeah, so how Do we do that again? Okay. Let's see. We're going to do create query on the table, and then so can we do that? With user data object table, create query. I was afraid so. That's the old API. But there is a execute query segmented async, which we can feed the type. So that's user data option. Let's resolve it. And this expects a table query and a token. So the table continuation token is required if we have many results. So it will just return maybe 50 results or something, or 100. I don't know exactly. And if we want to get the next 50 or the next 100, we need to have a table continuation token. But since I do not expect we have more options than just a few, maybe 10 at most, I don't think we need a table continuation token, but we need to have a query. So we feed in null for the continuation token, and we can create a query here. New table query, yeah, where we again feed in our entity type, so it's user data option. But we're saying yes, this is awaitable, but we're not awaiting it. It's correct. So let's await it and catch the results. So now we would have a list of options, and this can be simplified. So let's do that. Okay, perfect. Now we want to have this result and map it to a model, because we do not want to have row key and partition key in our results. We just want to have something like an ID that we can use and the title. But it's more or less the same entity, it's just a little bit different. Therefore we create a models folder and add a user data option over here. And I see that we now get a little bit confusing names because I renamed them both data options. Let's name this one entity so that we can better. Let's rename this. Okay, so it automatically renames it here. Now, just entities and our results is entities selects. I'm going to use a link to create a new user data option model. So basically this maps the entities to a model. We could have used a mapper for this, for example, auto mapper, but this is such a simple mapping that we'll do it by hand for now. and avoid the overhead of a mapper dependency. So this thing does not have any properties yet, so let's give it a property for an ID, type string ID, and let's give property string for title. There we go. Clean it up. So now we have this ID, and may want to use the see why it's complaining. So we have to the lambda. So we want to make use the row key, which is unique, and the title. And then we can return this as the result from object results. We're not going to do the bad requests. You don't get to feed in any parameters anyway. So if it goes wrong, then probably cannot connect to our table storage. So let's set a breakpoint here so we can follow what's going on, run it, and in the meantime I'm going to start up Postman. So I'm using Postman to basically, it's my go-to tool to test out my functions locally, and also host it on Azure. And Postman allows you to do HTTP requests to particular endpoints. It's very powerful. If you're not using Postman yet, you should definitely consider. Well, let's hope it's not taking a few minutes, but sooner than that. Perfect. Okay. It's new. Not sure what it does. I need to check it out once. Let's start off with a new collection so I can group all the requests that I create together. Let's call this the company Connec. Create, favorite it, so it stays on top because we're now working with it. And let's add a request. Get user data options. Here we go. Open it up. So here we have. It's going to be a get, and the URL is over here. We don't need to send anything in right now, just plain get. Now here we go. So we get into our function. We should have a reference to this table over here, which we have. Query, execute it. We have obviously no results, so this should just return an empty array as it does. Perfect. Okay, now let's check it out if we were to add. So you notice that I did not create a table explicitly. It does not exist yet. It should have created it for me, like you see. So that's one of the benefits of having this as a parameter binding. Otherwise I would need to call the creative not exists function on it. It will just clutter my code a little bit more, and right now I just get the table. If it does not exist yet in this environment, it will create it for me and I can just do my stuff, which is nice. So let's open it so that we can actually add an entity to it. So remember that we need to give it an additional title. So for example, the partition key can be my starting point. I'll probably pick something that is unique for, or that similar for all the values that we enter. And as a row key, well, we can use a GUID, for example. Let's generate one, create GUID. Copy. There we go. So, starting point. Voila. Notice that I forgot to add the title. Luckily, I can always do that afterwards. Now let's give it a title. And the title would be my custom source. Alright. Great. I did not edit it. That sucks. Let's delete this one. There we go. So we just added the title. Perfect. Let's run it again. This time we should get at least one result. Of course, I still have the breakpoint set. So let's remove that for now. Let's go ahead. And here we go. So now we get back the source. Perfect. So next up is that I think I'm gonna create a function to get the value, and therefore probably I want to ask the value by ID that will eventually call that webhook and return the value. But for now we're just gonna have it return 0 so we can test it out. So it's a new function, so let's add a new function. Before I do though, I did not like the route. So as you can see here, it's now API and then get user data options, which basically a bit ugly. But we can change that, so we can just say user data options. And now basically what this does is it will be rewritten to look like this. That's a bit nicer. Let's add that other function. Function get user data value. Again, it's an HTTP trigger. Let's pick those routes. So in this case, I can say user data option slash and then the ID of that user data option, which makes for a nice URL. Then I can get that ID as a parameter. I do not need to do anything special for it. It's the Azure Functions runtime that does this for me. naming stuff. And also here we're not gonna do something with the name parameter because we have that ID parameter. So in this case, it's a bit silly, but we're just gonna return. But let's just return the number. Why would we make it more difficult than it is? Or maybe we can. Let's not make it too complicated. Let's just return new OK object result, and for now we'll have it return 0. So it does not do anything, but this is just a stub for the functions we will be creating at a later stage. And well, I can run it again. Let's see if it works. If you guys have any questions with what I'm doing, you're free to use the chat and just go ahead and ask anything you'd like to know. Otherwise, I'll just continue working on this. Alright, so now we can see that we have the other endpoint as well. Let's add a new request. This time the get user data value. And we can input the ID, or the doesn't really matter what ID I feed in right now because it's not actually doing that lookup. But let's just give it something to play with, and I think I made a typo. Plural. Let's not. Let's stop this because we want to have it mimic the web function. Like this. All right. So for anyone joining right in a couple, maybe 30 minutes, 20 minutes, we're building an extension to a SharePoint Framework solution where we want to fetch the configuration values dynamically so that we don't need to create all the extensions to the backend systems in the extension itself, but it can in runtime resolve the extensions, and we can make it easier for people to add additional options as well. So right now I'm working on a function that will retrieve the options that are available, and next up, if this works, we're gonna set it up so that we can create a webhook. So now we see that the name is correct. Let's send it. I should just get back 0. Starting up. Okay, it's taking its time. That's something that I regularly forget. So if you click somewhere in your command line tool, it will basically freeze the execution. Maybe it's something that you are aware of. I did not notice. And you saw that it was frozen until I pressed enter in that window, and will continue. It took me a while to figure that one out. Alright, so we get back 0. Let's, as expected, let's save these queries for now. And I'll go on to the real meat of it, because this was fun and all, but we want to make a webhook. So for that webhook, I want to create a dummy logic app, because eventually I want to enable non-developers or power users to create logic apps, or rather flows that they can use to add additional sources to this web part. So that does not require a developer to add additional sources. Right now I'm doing it through logic apps, but I can try to see if it also works in Flow directly. Let's see. The idea is basically the same, so Flow and logic apps are based on the same technology. They're very similar, but a little bit different in some ways. So here it's Flow. I can create a new flow here. Create from templates. I just want to have a blank one. How do I create a blank flow? Automated instance. This always confuses me. I think it's instance. No, it's the automated. Yes, okay. There's no HTTP trigger. It's nice. Request. Maybe not an automated flow then. This is so confusing. Okay. I'm a developer, not a power user. Anyway. There. I believe there is a webhook. Yes. So right now we can use the generic webhook to test it out, to test the webhook logic. Eventually I want to create a custom connector that wraps some stuff of this webhook so that it is easier to use and it's more descriptive. But for now, just to test out the logic of subscribing and unsubscribing a webhook, we're going to use the HTTP webhook trigger. So the subscribe method usually is a post. The subscribe URI. How does this work? Maybe I do not understand correctly how this works. Trigger an action on something. Right. So how does this work again? Subscribe URI. Yeah, so I need to subscribe to some function. Oh yeah, okay. I'm back in the game. Yeah, so we need to basically add two functions. Start with the subscribe first. Subscribe user data option. But it's gonna get called for subscribing a user data. Value. User data option. We're gonna have it use a post. let's also use the user data options. Basically, we're going to create a user data option in our table. You'll notice that the user data options plural it's the same URI, but since it's another verb, it's a different verb, we can use the same URI. Basically, if we do a get, we do this URI, we get the data. If we do a post, we create new data. Should make sense. And we want to have a reference to the table. We did that before. We did this here. So let's get a table. Right. Using statements. Okay. Then we want to feed some stuff to it. So what we can do in the post, we want to subscribe a title. Flow source. So right now we need to tell it explicitly to use this. That's why I want to create a custom connector for it so that we can have an input field which has title, and it will just submit it in the way that we need it. But we're going to submit this title. And let's see. Let's close this right away. So that we can get a model. Basically, it's just the user data option that we return, but without an ID. This ID will be empty, which is okay. Right, so let's change this to a request message so that we can get easier access to the body. For user data option is the request of content. Read as async, and we can tell it to read it as a user data option. Solve it, and it's async. So to await it. Now we have this user data option, and somewhere we need to get the URL from. How does that work? Let's see. I'm just going to the custom connectors. I'm going to do that later. Here I use the webhook as a second. It's strange. Yeah, so here they're submitting. I think it's in the headers, but what is the header called? It should be in the header though. Let's see what the logic app puts. Oh, and one thing. I'm using the Edge Dev, so the insider version. For some reason it's continuously switching me to German. And I always get the better results in US English. Let's see. Use the webhook. Okay, I can use something like the callback URL directly in. That's interesting. Okay, so do a callback, and then specify the callback URL like this. So I get this as well. Excellent. I need this to store this in the table anyway, so I need to have it in my object. Now let's call callback URL. Let's add it here as well. Excellent. Let's call it callback URL here as well. Oh, I'm trying to save. Shouldn't have done that. Okay, so this is gonna work. Obviously, we have not published our function yet, so this is not gonna work. But this is just the idea. We're gonna call it from Postman to see if this is gonna work. But at least this gives us an idea. For deleting, so what we have to do is store this inside again inside the table. So we have to map it to an entity. So the row key, we want to have something unique. So let's use the new GUID. I want to set the title to user data option title, and we want to set the callback URL to option callback URL. Right, so now we've created this entity that we're going to store. Obviously, this string here we want to avoid, but we'll clean it up later. So now we have the user table operation. Let's insert or replace. It's always a nice feature, so I don't need to check if it already exists and update it if it already exists. Which is a bit silly, by the way, because I'm generating a new GUID every time. So it's not gonna exist anyways. Unless I'm gonna use the title to create something unique or use something else. I'll have to figure that one out later. because if we want to avoid that every time a user saves the flow or logic app, and potentially it will do another subscribe call, I want to avoid that we get duplicates in our table storage. But for now, let's just use the insert or replace and assume that it's may exist already. And then we have that user data options table, do the execute async, feed it. I need to put that in a variable. This, there we go. Await it because it's async. And if everything was well, we need to map it back, or since it's just the ID that has been changed, we can use the user data option.id is entity.row key. So we update the ID, and so when we return it, we return the same object as that we received in the request, but then with the ID set. User data option go. All right, so now we can actually create new user data options. Let's create the unsubscribe right away as well. It's called unsubscribe. And we're gonna expect a delete on the same URI, except we want to have the ID here. So we get back the ID as well. And then table operation.delete. We need to first get the entity in order to delete it. User data table, gets no way to just get a single. How do I retrieve a single entity? Tables to branch. Table operation.retrieve. That makes sense. Execute async. Table operation dot retrieve. We want to retrieve a user data option entity. By partition key, it is getting too long. So I'm going to do it like this, bar retrieve operation. And then we use the my starting point magic string. Partition key and the row key is the ID. And this time we can retrieve operation. It's awaitable. Okay. So how does he do this? Retrieve, blah, blah, blah. Actually cast it, okay? Delete entity results. Use the table results. And this is a user data option. Entity. All right. So then it's deleted, and we just need to tell the caller that it was okay. New okay. Results. There we go. So let's start this up. In the meantime, let's set up 2 additional requests. The first to subscribe user detail option. And another one unsubscribe user detail option. Go. Start off with the subscribe first. So it's going to be a post running now. So here we go. We need to have a body. JSON. Oh, here we go. It will have a title. My post option source, whatever. And we'll have a callback URL. Whatever it will be, I'll keep it local. Alright, I think this is everything that is required. There we go. So it has created this in my table now. So if I open this again, there we go, with the callback URL. Excellent. And now I have this ID. I can also delete it. Save this first. Unsubscribe. I'm going to do a delete. The URL is basically the same as this, but then with the ID at the end, it's a delete. That's all we need to do. Send 200, okay. And now it's gone. And it's gone. Okay, it's not gone. So what's wrong? What did I forget? Okay, yeah, makes totally sense. Very stupid. I created this delete operation. But I didn't do anything with it. So that's very stupid. That's easily to fix. Execute async. Delete operation. There we go. Now it should also delete. Starting up, and there we go. Let's try this again. Delete. $200, okay. And this time it should have removed it. There we go. Excellent. So now we can remove and create these automatically, but we should now also be able to do it via our flow. Although we need to make sure that this webhook is available over the internet. And we can publish our function over the internet, but we can also check out if this actually works using ngrok. I've not tried this, but this should in theory work. So ngrok allows you to create a tunnel into your network that is accessible from the outside. You really need to sign up. Yeah, I have done so already. Let's see, in the password manager. And grok, look at this. Username. Oh. Call in here. There we go. Autofill. Boom. No? No. Log in. Perfect. Okay, so download ngrok. Okay, so I've downloaded it, unzipped it. Now go to the command line. Downloads and grok. And then start it up with grok HTTP, but I need it to be available on port 7071, because that's where my function is running. There. See, over here, 7071. So this will start up ngrok, or whatever it is pronounced, I'm not really sure. Alright, it's all online. So now I can use this address as the outside address, which is quite a lot of fun. I can go here and use this as the subscribe URI /API/user data options. So basically, if I use this to get, I would get my data, which is currently just one value. There we go. See, so now it pulls that data from local, but it's accessible remote. So I can test this out if this works. Delete the same thing, it's the same URL, we just use a different verb. We don't need to have a body. So if I save this, and it does not work yet until I add some additional step here. Most of the time just add a variable in order to initialize. And so now I can save it. Upon saving, this will actually do the call to the webhook registration, to the subscribe. We should be able to see that. So it's saved. We got a request, and let's see over here. We should have an additional. Wow, there it is. My flow source with some callback URL. Excellent. So this is very nice. Also, if I remove this flow, which we're gonna do now as well. So if I go back here and do delete, it should call the unsubscribe. But did not work as expected. It did. Oh. It's probably, yeah, it obviously does not know my ID. Yeah, that makes sense. I need to fix this. So let's first get rid of this thing, because it will never be unsubscribed anymore. There it goes. Since I have set it up, let's create a new one. Just skip HTTP webhook again. There we go. HTTP webhook. Subscribe method still post. Let's correct this URL again. Do I still have it copied? So I have it copied. Post. And subscribe URI is also this. Subscribe body, we had it like title, my flow source, and we had the callback URL set to the callback URL. But if you're gonna unsubscribe, this thing does not know about the ID that I told it about. So we can specify the callback URL in the body. So and we can look it up using the callback URL, which is fine. Before saving this, let's add the variable. So we can save it in a minute. So right now we're using some artificial ID to save this user data option for the row key. But why not use the callback URL as the row key? Because that's what we are getting back. So let's do this. Then we don't need that additional property. So when we go here, we can remove this. We can also remove it here. That's not true. I'm going to remove the IT. So some mappings will probably not work anymore. That's fine for now. So this does not work, obviously. For unsubscribe, we cannot use this structure, but instead I'm going to use the same method that we used here. We're gonna read it as a user data option, then we're gonna retrieve it using the user data option dot callback URL. Excellent, because that's now the row key. Retrieve it, and then we delete it, and we return. Okay, so we're gonna try this again. And that was expected. We're very lazy on just letting the compiler do the work. So set the callback URL over here.
Life like this, pen to paper alone like this.
Let's start up again. First I'm going to try to do it locally. So in this case, this is what we used to have. It's fine. Now, let's see. This is not going to work anymore. This time we need to feed it a body. JSON, and actually we only need to callback URL. So get to put it in quotes. No. Like this. So this callback URL obviously needs to be the same as the subscribe, and then it will unsubscribe. So let's test this out first. This should create a new subscription. Internal server error. Probably. Add requests. Maybe because a URL contains illegal characters. Okay, so the callback URLs maybe not, or we need to sanitize it, but that's also crappy to do. Or we can use the title. Or we can use the title. So instead of the callback URL, we use the title here as well. And obviously we must make sure they match up. But in the custom connector, we're going to set it up to do this automatically, so we don't need to think about it. For now, we're going to make sure. So the title is going to be the row key, and the callback URL is going to be the callback URL, which does not exist anymore. But we're going to fix that. So still the same. Now let's make sure that mapping is okay. Row key value, we're not doing subscribe. So this is the callback URL and row key. So now we're storing the title as the row key. For the unsubscribe, we're going to use the title as the row key for the lookup. Alright, let's try this again. This time it should work, hopefully. Starting up. Notice this typo, by the way. SK. Should report that. Right. Try again. So request still the same. There we go. But this time I'm going to use the title. So we're just making sure that it was created. There it is. Title is empty, of course, because we got rid of the title. The title is now here, which is fine. I'm going to remove it here as well. Once a title, always a title. Anyway. So now we're going to remove it. Call this 200 OK. Refresh, and it's gone. So that's perfect. Excellent. Now let's do it from the flow. So now if we save this flow, subscribe. Ooh, that's nice, my flow source. And now we're gonna delete this flow. Yeah, maybe also interesting to see what does it do if I change something about this. I just changed the title. Will it unsubscribe, resubscribe? That would be nice, right? It does. Very nice. So what it does on the background, it is unsubscribing the one with the other title and subscribing the new one with the new title. Okay, so it looks like the unsubscribe works. You can confirm that. We delete this. And now it subscribes. And our webhook is gone. Excellent. So that's pretty amazing now. So what we've done now so far is we have created an API through which we can so we've created an API through which we can retrieve the user data options. We can retrieve the value, although that's still a dummy value, but it's next up on the agenda to work on that. And we can register a new user data option via a webhook, and we can remove it again through the webhook unsubscribe. Currently we use the default webhook, HTTP webhook trigger of Flow. In the next broadcast, we're going to look at creating a custom connector that wraps that webhook subscription so that we can make it easier for users to use it, and they don't need to really understand the URLs and bodies of the subscription and unsubscribe events. And we make it easier for people who are used to working with Flow to add a new trigger. It will automatically subscribe a new option in the table. So we're going to look at that in the next broadcast. Thanks for watching for now. Keep an eye out on my Twitter and my Twitch channel to see when that new broadcast is going to happen. I plan on doing it somewhere next week, hopefully. So watch out for that. Also, I'm gonna publish the recording to YouTube afterwards. You can find it on my YouTube channel if you follow www.watchmecode.tv. It will get you to my YouTube channel where you can view past recordings. There's nothing there yet, but afterwards I will make sure this one is uploaded there. So check back then. Thanks for watching. Make sure to follow me on Twitch in order to get notified when a new broadcast is about to begin, and hopefully see you next time. Bye.